just heard that one congregation doesn't do the narrative budget, but puts and I've seen many do this, puts the ministries in pictures. So that, what the ministries are projected, I'm sure, right, on the screen, in the sanctuary or in the parish hall. It doesn't have to be verbal, right? It can be done in multiple ways. Use your imagination, certainly use your homepage, use all kinds of technology to do it. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is that everything that I'm sharing with you, except the residential stewardship program, which I describe as the Cadillac of the programs, and that's where everybody gets a visit, right? Everything is either in the congregational packet or it's in the congregational packet that you have on the CD. All right? So I haven't been calling up all the CD materials, because then I'd have to be doing two things at the same time. And so the narrative budget is on the CD, all right? And the guide for building a case for your congregation is on the CD. Also, how you would do some asset mapping. So when I move into the area that I know I'm not moving enough, in terms of time and talents, that's on your CD as well. How you can look at the assets of your congregation, and so many other things, like a calendar. And you have the poster, right? That will take you through the whole year, as well as a calendar that's on the CD. Any questions or so? Anything I missed in the in between? I know somebody else told me something that I'm drawing a blank on. But I know this is the part that you've all been waiting for, and that's death. And that's estates and planned giving. It just stuns me to watch in congregations when, and it's usually older women who pass away, and everybody sort of expects that they'll leave something for the congregation, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And usually the reason why they don't is that they've never been asked. Nobody ever provides them the opportunity to leave, or gives them the mechanisms by which they can leave something to the congregation. And John and I were talking last evening that congregations go through dips and cycles, right? But 10%, let's say, or a residual of an estate. You know what I mean when I say residual? That means after a person who's deceased has taken care of his or her family and charities, there's a residual, right? Sometimes, the seminary, and having been the president of the seminary, I know this, sometimes the seminary has gotten more money from a residual gift than it would have ever dreamed of getting from a set amount. Are you with me? Right? So you might say to some of your members, just leave us as a residual, because people don't know how much they're going to have. Right? There's a dead space right here. People don't know how much they're going to have when they move on to eternity. We'll find a good way of saying it. It was so funny. My wife and I met with our attorney just this past week, right? And it was so difficult. He's a friend of mine, a friend of both of ours, for him to say, Renee, I hate to say this, but when you pass, do you want Phil to have all your and I'm going, you better say this, right? I'm sure she was wanting to say the same thing in her mind, but it was so hard for him to say, right? When you die. right? Why else would we doing a will, right? That's what this was all about, right? But isn't it, right? It's like Freud's three big things, right? Death, sex, and money. It's so difficult for us to talk about that, and so we miss so many opportunities. Do you know that 85% of the country's wealth is in the hands of women? And you see when this fellow this poor sucker was trying to raise money, right? And he's looking at the husband, right? And the answer was always no, right? We don't get it, right? Because women live longer than men. Duh, right? And it's also true that women, when they inherit an estate, are more conservative about how they spend the money than men are, because men tend to think that money's infinite, right? That if we run out, we'll just make more, right? I'll just go out and take a second job or something, right? Whereas women...
Oh, yeah.
But women who are, and this I may be telling you something that's not true in certain situations, but when women lose their spouse, this is in a married situation, it's suddenly, oh my gosh, and here's the issue, I might outlive my resources. All right, my wife and I both have long-term care insurance. We've been paying for a long time. It is right. You know what that is? Frightfully expensive, right? There's a limit to it of about $275,000. If God gives me the grace to live as long as it will take, for me to actually use that and not be a burden on our children, that will probably only pay for 1 year. Right?
Yes.
It costs $10,000 a month.
Right.
So folks who are worried about whether they will outlive their resources have something to worry about. Does everybody understand? I mean, because health care and care for the aged in this country is. I don't know why I've suddenly become interested in these things. My 65th birthday is next week, and suddenly I'm going, I actually had to apply for Social Security and discover that Medicare does not pay, right? Medicare does not pay for all of long-term health care. They only pay a percentage of it. It's capped. It makes sense, right? That it's capped. Yet people have to be worried about whether they will have that. Not to belabor these points, but as church leaders, we need to know the context in which people are in, right? And secondly, we also need to give them the mechanisms, the tools by which they can continue their stewardship. Because they will, by and large, they will want to do that, right? They want to take care of their kids. They want to probably, because why everybody's in love with their alma mater, I'm not sure. But I went to a state school, and so I'm not as in love with the University of Massachusetts as some of my relatives are with the colleges, and I know the reason. I'm just. We've got to be in that mix, as there is the greatest transfer, I told you this before, right, of wealth going on in the world's history. And one of the things that you'll find in this, in some of these books that are in our bibliography, is we're missing the boat, because. So when we talked about churches being in cycles, that doesn't mean that the cycle is always going to be down, but we may need the resources, right, in order to carry us through the down cycle, so that as we take in younger families, etc. Or, let me just give you, one other experience that I've had, and I've probably visited 1,000 congregations as president, so I have lots of stories. I try to limit them. But one pastor told me, he said, my attendance has not gone down, but my giving has gone down dramatically. So I've been visiting this congregation over a number of years, and I said, that's because, Pastor, you're doing a really good job, and your congregation is getting younger. So a lot of the older members, whom somebody has spent a lot of time teaching how to be good stewards, right? We're moving to Florida, or the topic of this session, they were, how do we say this? Moving on? No. Moving to a better place.
Going home.
Going home, right? They were, but the attendance is the same, but my budget stinks. Well, it's, now if that congregation had done some work in estate planning, right, then indeed the resources would have been there to tie them over until these younger families could become better stewards. One of the documents you have in the CD are stages of stewardship. We have to raise stewards, right? And so one of the reasons Dr. Cron wanted me to speak on this is that so many of our congregations are a sea of gray hairs. It's so nice to look out now and see that that's not true here. But we need to make sure that generation, right, looks out for the future of the proclamation of the gospel and the administration of the sacraments. Am I being clear? Right? And it could mean leaving a residual. It could mean, if you understand what that means, or it could mean giving 10%, of the estate. That's what my wife and I decided to do. We're just going to give. We have no idea what the estate will be. 10% is going to go to our congregation because we're tithers. It just made sense to us, right? And that's before the kids get anything. That's 10%. Off the top, along with our other charities. So it's important that you provide a way, and then here's the second piece. It's most important that people know what it'll be used for. All right? Now, the best estate gift is, and that means, your finance committee and your stewardship committee is going to have to become literate in some things, right? The best gift is an unrestricted gift. Do you know what an unrestricted gift is, right? That means the congregation, and it should be a gift that says the congregation council, has to decide how it's going to be spent, right? That's the best gift, because then the congregation can preserve the corpus, maybe use the income, or if we get into a huge recession like we're in an unrestricted gift, the congregation can actually dip into the principal, right? Because it doesn't help to have all kinds of restricted money in a fund, right? You'll probably all have that, right? You have some funds that you can't touch because somebody left it for, I'm going to make something funny, but certain collars on a choir robe, right? And so you can't use it except if you have a court make a decision. So the best gift is an unrestricted gift. The second best gift is a temporarily restricted gift. And that's a gift that is just aimed at a particular thing, like music, right? This is a gift for music, and the congregation should hold the corpus, but doesn't have to hold the corpus, as long as it does what it says, what the gift indicates. Do you understand what I'm saying? What the gift indicates has to be in the church's budget. The best thing to do is to have the money behind it. But if you get a little behind, as long as you're doing what a temporarily restricted gift indicates, you're still okay. Third kind of gift, very important, is a restricted endowed gift, right? And that's a gift where you cannot touch the principal. You can only use up to whatever your state law allows. In Pennsylvania is 7%. These days, after the Great Recession, people are recommending about 4%. You should use because of the vicissitudes of the market. So the endowment then also has to have a mission and a case. And the wisest congregations will always say 10% will go to mission support, right? Here's the point. If the congregation doesn't witness to the people that it gives beyond itself, will the people be motivated to give to the congregation? No. The only reason I give to my congregation is because I want to transcend myself. Through the support of the gospel, right? Through witnessing, but I want to transcend what you know what I mean by that? I want to do more than I can do by myself. And if my congregation was stingy and didn't give beyond itself, do you think I would be a tither? No, I would not, because I tithe because it's good for me spiritually, right? But I would tithe in other ways if I couldn't believe that the church was generous. So as leaders of the church, you have to lead the congregation in your generosity in the same way that you want people to be generous. That's just good modeling, right? And that's why we're part of the ELCA, we're part of synods. We can do so much more than we can do by ourselves. Even to the point, to be very pedantic, of all this material that we have, right? It's just like I was picking on Pastor Hill, and he was so upset he left. We will often say, I don't know what church-wide does, right? Well, Dr. Crown and I showed you what church-wide does, right? With all of this material, do you realize how much work that is to put all this material together so that we would know how to do stewardship and don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to that. So it's very important that in the documents and the purpose of your endowment, that endowment has a case and a mission. Is that clear? Let me tell you that the worst possible case for you to have happen is to receive an estate and you have no plans for it. It's a guarantee for a council fight. Not necessarily. You can be a very fine, well-functioning council, but it can also hurt giving if it's not done well. There's a congregation that I know that inherited a $6 million estate and is having financial difficulties. It's like winning the lottery and going bankrupt, right? Because people just say, well, I don't have to give. And a $6 million restricted endowment at 5%, right, is not a whole lot of money when you have a budget of $1 million or so, right? And can you see the problem? So you've got to be very clear, transparent. But first of all, in order to be able to receive gifts, you have to have an endowment fund and an endowment committee. How many congregations here have endowment funds and endowment committees? Let me just tell you a story. I don't have many stories, but here's one. When I was a young whippersnapper pastor, and I went to something like this, right? I went home. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea what I was doing. I went home to my parish and told the council we have to establish an endowment, right? And they went, "What?" Right? We're this poor inner city church, 60% unemployment all around us. We've done lots of work in stewardship, right? We were doing all right, but then they just sort of went, "Pastor," I had this great treasurer who would always say to me, "Pastor, all right, you can do it, but I don't believe it, and I'm your Thomas. You make a believer out of me, and I'll be your support. I loved him. His name was Jack Gorshman. Jack would always say, make a believer out of me, right? I didn't. I had no idea what the possibilities were. So we announced that we were going to have an endowment. This is what it was for. I'm visiting this widow who I would always visit. Her husband had died not too much longer, and she said, Pastor, I have $40,000 that I have no idea what to do with. And when I die, she said, I have no kid. We have no kids. This was just after announcing it, right? She died just about a year or two later, and the endowment already started off with $40,000. This was back in the 70s, which was a lot of money. It grew in short order, just with stories like that, to $200,000. In a struggling urban church. I would have never thought that this lady, had that, or you understand the story? I don't know what to do with my money. We didn't know what to do with our money, but now all of a sudden we had a case. Do you understand? A case for her money, and it was received. Now, the other thing that's important is you need good advice. And we've got thriving people here and others who can help you on that. But in terms of advice, the congregation needs to know how to receive certain kinds of money, right? A couple of things I want to tell you, and this is turn off the video. There were many times as seminary president that I would visit congregations. And I would first go to see the pastor, and the pastor would say, we don't have any persons of means in this congregation, right? And 3 or 4 people in that congregation were our major donors. You think I would be going to that congregation? 2 or 3 people, but the pastor had no idea, right? That 2 or 3 of their people, had enormous assets. So that's already something that we need to think about. But secondly, some of these people would say a couple of things. One, I can't give to my congregation because they have no way of receiving stock securities. And my appreciated assets are the only way I can give. You know what I mean when I say appreciated assets, right? So I bought Ford at 2 during the recession, and it's now worth 16. That's true. I didn't, but that's an appreciated asset, right? To help me with taxes. People don't give just for taxes, but it helps. So if I give, right, to the church or to a charity, that helps, right? But they'll tell me my church has no way of accepting them, so I can't give them. All right? The second thing that a lot of people of means will not, give to your congregations, which is why your dreaming and your planning is important, is there's something called the tipping point, or the tipping principle, right? So you know why Harvard gets so much money from wealthy people even if they don't need it? And it's because people feel that Harvard has the capacity to receive it, right? And do something with it. So unless you have a vision, a plan, etc., you follow, right? To receive and do something with the resources in this greatest transfer of wealth, they're not going to want to tip the boat and give you more than you can handle. Is everybody clear on that? Right? So it might mean that you'll get less than what that you would really hope you might get, but you'll get the appropriate amount if you ask. Now, when people leave money in their estate, I told you this before, it's usually about 4 or 5. I just know this because I've read many wills, as the president of the seminary, there's usually about 4 or 5 charities to which they give. All right? And if you're set up as a congregation to receive gifts, guess who's number 1? The congregation. They love you. Your members love you, right? But can they give to you if you don't have the mechanisms to give, right? No. So that has to be it's already late in the game, because statistics have shown that in this, you know what I mean by this enormous transfer of wealth, right? Of the great generation and my generation as well. As we decide to hand over we decide to hand over our assets, right? Most of the money is going to their children, right? And this is all in Cliff's book. The second is going to their colleges, educational institutions, and the third to hospitals. And you know why to hospitals, right? Because they've been taken care of, and they want to live, right? They want cancer solved. They want to, we want to live on, right? And it's all good reason. But we used to be the top of the food chain, and because we were not making our case. I don't want to drive that point, but that's what his books are about, right? Because we're not making our case clearly enough, we're losing ground. Now, there are all kinds of instruments by which you can also invite people to give, which, and this is all in this book, which is in your packet, right, John? The wills and trusts. This is in the congregational packet. This tells you everything. And if you order these and you hand these out to your people, this can help them put all their charitability together, their philanthropic work, and you can just sort of very carefully say, we have an endowment fund now. If you would like to, right? If you would like to this, we have a mortgage, that the previous pastor whom you loved left us, right? If you would like to help pay that down, right? We would give to that. The ELC has it all spelled out for you in here. You could give this, have a group of people together, and just help them with it. Invite a Thriving agent. They could do it. And here are some of the instruments I checked earlier that the Thriving can do some of these things, as well as the ELC Foundation. You know what a charitable gift annuity is? So let's say there's somebody who's 70 years old. That's older than I am, so that's why I picked the age, right? And you go to them and they say, look, I can't give Ascension Church $500,000 right now because I don't know how long I'm going to live. So you can say, all right, take $500,000, put it in an annuity, and you will get interest from that depending on your age, right? At 70 would probably, does anybody know, would probably be about 7% maybe that a person would. A lot more than somebody could make on a, on a certificate of deposit. The stock market might make a little more these days, but it won't forever. And that income is guaranteed to that person, right? For the rest of his or her life. That's what an annuity is, all right? So that $500,000 is invested, is paying, depending upon the age, right? If you're 65, and they start in $10,000 increments, right? So I used a big number, we could say 100,000, we could say 10,000. And so that person is receiving that income for as long as he or she lives. And usually what happens, just so you know, I don't want any finance committee members here to get all kind of greedy-eyed, that usually what you get is 50% of the corpus, because the person is living off that. Does everybody understand? Right? So if you set it up for $500,000, the church, upon the person's death, will usually get about $250,000. Now, as my development directors used to say at the seminary, when I grumbled and I said, you told me it was going to be $500,000. Larry House used to always say, would you rather not get anything?
Yeah.
Right? You're agreeing with him, right? I don't know. You're right, sure.
Get something.
I mean, right? It's so make sure. The reason I say this is make sure you don't plan on 100,000 and you get 50, right? See, that's the mistake. If you get all excited and say, let's say you use this, and you should rarely use estates for capital campaigns, right? Because if you do, and you bank it at 100, and then the bills come with the mortgage, and you only get 50, you've got a lot of institutions and nonprofits did that before the last recession. Then there are charitable remainder trusts, and that is a trust whereby let's say, we'll take another 100,000, right? One of your members says, okay, I want to give the congregation $100,000 upon my death, but I want that 100,000 to take care of my wife, right? Until she passes, or her sister, right, who has handicap issues or something. That's a trust, right? So somebody is being taken care of by that money, and when the beneficiaries pass away, then the congregation gets the corpus. All right, and this is on the last page of your of this will and trust workbook, which will indicate all kinds of ways that you can build your endowment. All right. Or build your capacity. It has memorial endowment funds. There also, and this is the one I'll stop on for a moment, see if you have some questions, but there are also donor-directed funds. I bet you that in these communities where you are, there are community foundations. Do you know about them? The Thrive It has a community foundation, but there are others as well. And these then are donor-directed funds. Another issue that many of us have, I see, yeah, I'm going to be done in a second. Many of us have, as small nonprofits like a congregation, is that a person of wealth will sometimes not trust the future, that money will be handled well. So they will do a donor-directed fund. And that means that they'll go to the community foundation or Thrive It's community foundation, and they'll give them $100,000, and you will then get the income from that. It's a donor-advised fund. You will get the income from that. Now, again, you'd say, okay, we don't have the principal, but wouldn't you like a check of $5,000 a year that comes maybe quarterly, right? They usually come quarterly. You follow, right? So, but that way, the donor knows that the principal will never be spent, but the congregation will always receive that which the congregation to which my wife and I belong has about $1 million in those kinds of funds that generate about $50,000 a year. That just comes in, and it's very helpful. Yes.
Thank you. Nicole Hudson, Church of the Redeemer, East New York, Brooklyn. My question was, what churches, unfortunately, as some of our churches are in transition, merging, and God forbid, even closing down their doors.
Yeah.
How do you then reach out to your stewards and say, well, think about the future when it's not looking so pretty? And people may say, well, I love my church, but if we merge, I don't know about this new formed church. So how do you then go out and say to people, yes, we know it's ultimately, don't confuse the mission, it's ultimately about God and spreading His word, But you know how sometimes people can be. This is my church, and I don't want to give to the new church, or I don't want to give if we're not going to be a church. So how do we address those things?
That's a very, very, and I think a lot of churches that are in transition, right? You have that issue. The technical answer is that, if you are successful in talking with somebody, right, you have a little clause in the agreement that says, or to the successor institution, right? Or they might name an institution to which they want the money to go to, if the congregation doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Yeah, right. The Synod, the ELCA, another institution that they love. All right. So you give them a safety clause, so they feel confident that their gift will be used, for the ministry of the gospel. All right. But I don't have an easy answer for your question about mergers and things like that. It would take a lot of work, right, to convince people of means to leave a future entity, right, in a future merged congregation in their estates. But you know what? One of the things I have discovered is if you listen to people, especially as in their 80s and 90s, and a lot of people don't have wills way up into their right. People are nodding. It's scary to see how many people haven't thought about it, because we don't talk about it. It isn't talked about in families or in the places that they trust the most, namely congregations. But if you are honest with folks, take where I served in Baltimore for 9 years, and there were 11 Lutheran churches around the two that I served a twofold parish, and the two merged, and then eventually with my successors, two more merged into our church, which became Amazing Grace. And if you talk to the old codgers, they would say, Pastor, when I was a young kid, there were only 2 churches here. And you would say, how what? And they would say, yeah, and then all these immigrants came in. And then we had the Scandinavian church and the Finnish church, and they weren't here, 70 years ago, right? When I was growing up. And so if we really listen to people and let them tell their stories, they can share with us how it was 50 years ago or 80 years ago. Some of the churches, how many churches here are less than 90 years old? Look at that. They're all newcomers. No, I'm serious. Lyle Schaller said the most have you ever heard of Lyle Schaller? He's a great church analyst. The most dangerous time for a church that's less than 90 years old is when its founding members pass away. Why? It's when it loses its mission. Unless you revise the vision again and again and again, right? So a lot of those folks, can remember when there weren't 4 Lutheran churches, all around. That there was just one, and history is sort of moving us in that direction again. And the older people are oftentimes our allies in the issue that you raised, because they can remember a time, right, when we didn't have the proliferation of churches in the 1950s.
How do you get your church out of a survival mode into an optimistic, futuristic one?
How do you get the church from a survival mode into a opportunistic, redevelopment mode? John and I have been talking about another seminar just on that. All right? So there's a long answer.
Is it next week?
John, when are you going to do that one? How you get congregations into a redevelopment mode. We talked about that at breakfast this morning.
That's been my mission, my own personal mission. It can be done, and If you want to stay between 4 and 5, we'll start the conversation.
So that, we talked, I was providing him resource people, to do that. We taught a course at that, at the seminary, because the ELCA requires that seniors take such a course now. So we had, we made all our seniors take those courses. There's no one answer to that incredible question, but that's really the question of the day, right? For so many of our churches. But help is on the way.
I'll be there at 5.
I just wanted to say that in America, 70% of Americans do not have a will. But the reality is, if you don't have a will, you have somebody who will divide up your estate. It's called the government. And they will not give to your church. And what I'm finding as I talk to people in my congregations, both of them about wills and estate planning, is that a lot of them, especially the older old-timers, have wills. And I said, great, did you remember Incarnation? Did you remember St. Michael's? And they said, no, my kids know what I want. And I have to say to them, your kids haven't been in church since they were confirmed, and they won't be in church until your funeral. And they will not give one dime to this congregation in your memory. You need to change your will. You need to change your will. But the first time I asked somebody to remember the will, the church in her will, she had planned to give me all of her money. She did. And pastors should not receive profit from the death of their parishioners. So I said, no, leave it to the church. And she gave $442,000 to my church in the Bronx. And my wife said, that could have been ours.
So, a couple of just things by way of conclusion, and then we're going to take a break for the one you've really been waiting for, capital campaigns. These are the lessons that I want you to get out of this one, and that is that I stepped in the dead spot. That's just still dead. There's just a dead spot.
Use this, and I'll replace the batteries while we're
Okay. It won't. But okay. Thank you. One, and this is just a technical thing that I noticed I had in my notes. If your members will do it, ask them for that paragraph in the will that indicates what they want to do for you. All right, just not the whole will, but just say, please give us the paragraph that if they say no, you don't argue with them, but you invite that. Why? A couple of things. One, your successor, when you do estate planning, you're doing it for your future, right? If you have a good estate plan, it usually takes 15 years for that to take effect. Why? Because, well, you know why, right? I mean, that's unless somebody does their will 2 years before they die, right? But usually, folks, live on, and if they write a will, it guarantees that they will live much longer than if and they include you in it. So ask for that section, right? The other thing that does is, let's say the will says we want the choir to wear turquoise collars forever, right? You can go back to them and say, can we change that such that if we don't need we appreciate that, but if we don't need turquoise collars, that the council can use it to its discretion? Do you see what I'm saying? That should always be the last sentence. That the council, the church council, they might want to say the pastor and the church council, right? Do you follow? Right? So if you've seen it, then what you're getting is the opportunity to talk with them about refining it for the mission of the church. Okay? Secondly, always respect the fact that your members are not your donors. Does that make sense? Right? So in other words, if you have a conversation about their will and they say, I'm going to leave 50%, to my college. I'm going to leave 10% to the seminary. I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to leave 5%, to the congregation. Don't argue with them. You're getting 5%, right? Are you with me? Right? They are not your donors. People will always give or leave money to 4 or 5 charities, in addition to their children. We're cultivating good stewards. That's what we're doing. So don't argue with them or resent the fact that they have charities. If you're third, right, we should be first, right? No, it doesn't go that way. And then the final comment I want to make is that what we've learned from all of these books that are on the table, and this is hard. This is a hard saying, is that everyone in your congregation is now a donor to be cultivated. We don't function that way. That's what Cliff is trying to tell us. That everyone, do you understand the implications of that? It means relationships, visits. Let's say you have tithers. It's one of the little notes I missed. That you invite your tithers to come and have a luncheon. Oh, you're favoring the wealthy people, right? They may not be the wealthy people. These are the tithers. There could be some folks in there who are less economic means than the wealthy people. But you have a little coffee for them to say thank you, right? Or you have a little group of people who have left you in their estates, right? And you have a luncheon for them. It's ask, thank, and tell, right? So you're telling them what you're doing. You're thanking them, for what they have done. But we think in terms of membership, right? And membership has obligations. What the experts are telling us is the ground has shifted on you. You get it? And what you have out there are donors to whom you have to make a case, you have to cultivate, you have to ask, and relationships are everything.